Hi guys, this is Miss Hosford, and today I'll be reading chapter 14 of No Summit Out of Sight. I had proved to Dad and Karen both that I was ready to take on more responsibilities during this climb. I was no longer just a climber. I was a full member of the team with jobs like keeping track of our elevation, setting alarms for waking up in the morning, and getting weather reports on the radio. My most important responsibility was taking the Lake Lewis survey. High scores were a signal that a climber was facing a life or death situation. I paid attention to the details and looked for the warning signs. Before we left base camp on the second morning, I totaled our scores. Everyone was safe to move on, but Ryan, Claire, and Mike weren't feeling all that hot. The mules didn't climb above Plaza de Mulas, so we had to carry our heavy packs as we climbed to Camp Canada at 16,568 feet on Christmas Eve. Earlier, we had only hiked up a valley, the Val de las Vacas, but when we left Plaza de Mulas, we were now actually on the mountain. The trail was so steep, loose, and rocky. Arriving at camp, the first thing we did was in at the ranger station. The doctor wasn't as uptight as Nurse Veronica. Your son's doing fine, he told Dad. You can check his vital signs yourself from now on and report them to base camp by radio. I saw the relief on Dad's face. One less thing to deal with. John returned to the Plaza de Mulas to acclimatize, while the eight of us packed into Dad's, Karen's, and my three-man tent to celebrate Christmas Eve. Even at 16,568 feet, there was no getting cold with all that body heat and our headlamps beaming. We were all crammed shoulder to shoulder with Karen in Dad's lap and Allie in Pablo's. It was time for some light holiday cheer. We shared the rules ahead of time for a white elephant gift exchange. You couldn't spend more than $20, and your gift couldn't weigh more than half a pound. Dad passed around a bowl with numbered pieces of paper. I got number 4. Allie had number 1 and chose a box wrapped in silver. She had opened it and found a Rubik's Cube. Her face twisted in confusion. What is this thing? She asked. Even after explanations and demonstrations, she didn't see the need for a Rubik's Cube on a mountain. Ryan, with number 2, had the option of taking her Rubik's Cube or picking another gift. It was fair to say that the Rubik's Cube was safe. He opened a green box containing a down camping pillow. Cool, Claire said, with paper number 3. I'll just take that pillow. Thank you. My turn next. Allie wiggled her gift in my face, trying to tempt me. Jordan, take my Rubik's Cube. Take my beautiful cube. No thanks. I'll try this purple box. Maybe I should have gone for the toy instead. I opened an ultralight towel set, but it was way too cold outside for a major wash and dry. John got the knife I'd bought. We laughed for hours, drinking hot cocoa and eating Karen's peanut butter cookies. It might have been unusual by some people's standards, but for me this was the second best Christmas ever, next to only the one 2 years earlier when I'd gotten my ice axe. Christmas Day, 6 of us chilled up at Camp Canada, while Dad took a trip back to Plaza de Mulas for more gear. Karen took a solo trip and shuttled supplies to Camp Nido, short for Nido de Condores, the nest of condors, and returned that afternoon just as Dad and John came back from Plaza de Mulas. When we left Camp Canada behind on December 26th, our first obstacle was finding a way through the Penentes, a field of upside-down icicles that were almost as tall as Dad. It would have been cool to break one of those off and pretend it was a Jedi sword, but I never damaged the environment like that. It took 4 hours of climbing to reach snowy Camp Nido. There had been mules at Mulas, so I'd hoped to see condors here. No such luck. The camp sat on a wide plateau surrounded by rocky peaks of unusual shapes. I got my first full view of the summit and the surrounding glacial peaks. I could see most of the trail to the top and actually spotted the tiny moving dots of 5 climbers heading across a large traverse. That would be me in a few days. The air was very thin at 18,000 feet, with still a massive distance up to the summit. Maybe it was that, or finally encountering snow on this mountain, or the responsibilities I had for keeping the team healthy and on track, but for the first time on Aconcagua, I felt like a real mountaineer. John, Pablo, and Allie arrived half an hour after Dad, Karen, and me, followed by Ryan, Claire, and Mike another 30 minutes after them. The trio of adventure racers dropped their packs and sank to the ground, breathing heavily. Ryan was holding his head, eyes closed. Jordan, Karen whispered, your survey. I got out my chart and started questioning them about headaches, nausea, and dizziness. Ryan waved me off. No need for that. I've had it. I'm going back down. Rest a few days at Camp Canada and do some smaller hikes, Dad suggested. You'll feel better and can try again. Ryan shook his head. I'm an endurance racer, not an altitude guy. This is killing me. I'm with him, Mike said. Claire's knees were drawn to her chest, and she was resting her forehead on her arms. Me too, she said. It's been great, honestly. I never would have seen Aconcagua otherwise. She stood up and put her pack back on. Me too, John said. I'm returning to Plaza de Mulas to acclimatize, but we'll be back to Summit with you. We hugged everybody goodbye and watched them leave, wondering what I, a barely 5 feet tall kid, was doing up here with strong, fit athletes like them when they had to give up. And what about Everest? It was almost 7,000 feet higher than Aconcagua. I heard somebody from another team puking not 10 feet away, and my stomach started to heave. This was insane. To make matters worse, one of the rangers who patrolled the high camps shook our door flap. Is this the tent of Jordan Romero? Yes, Dad said. He smiled, but I could tell he was expecting another challenge. The ranger asked if I had been eating and drinking well and insisted on checking the percentage of oxygen my blood was carrying. Before we left home, mine had been 100%. As people climb to higher elevations and breathe thinner air, their number gets lower. He clipped an oxygen sensor on my fingertip. We will not allow you to continue unless your blood oxygen is at least 80%. Mine was 85. He seemed a little angry that I wasn't suffering more. When he'd radioed the results to base camp, the doctors below accused him of lying. No one believed that a kid like me could be such a strong mountain climber. Dad placed the oxygen sensor back on my finger and took a photo of the gauge. Send this to base camp. We later learned that someone in another party on Nido had gotten seriously ill that morning with HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema, meaning his lungs had filled with fluid and he couldn't breathe. Left untreated, he would die, so they'd rushed him down the mountain. I guess that was why they were being extra cautious with me. Meanwhile, all this heaving and leaving was getting to me. I missed my mom and Michaela. I had never been this far from them at Christmas before. One of our sponsors, Network Innovations, had lent us a BGAN device that could connect to a satellite for making phone calls and using the internet. This thing was pretty complicated to set up, but I told Karen I wanted to talk to my mom, and she got it going for me. As soon as I put the receiver to my ear, I knew my mom was on the other end. I felt instantly happier. Hi, Mom, it's me calling you from 18,208 feet on Aconcagua. Oh, Jordan, are you okay? You're not sick? I have to admit, my eyes started to water just hearing her voice. I took a deep breath and pulled myself together. No, I'm good, better than people twice my size and age. Our connection wasn't the greatest, so I cupped my hands around the mouthpiece to be sure she heard what I said next. I miss you so much. I miss you too, sweetheart. Everyone does. The static got worse then, but I pressed on anyway. I'll be home pretty soon. We're supposed to summit in 3 days. Mom? Mom? Can you hear me? I'm okay. A long silence followed, then one more sentence from her. Promise you'll be careful and call me when you're down safely. The reception was breaking up, but I think I heard love you before we lost the connection. With a big empty hole inside, I gave the phone back to Karen to shut off properly. Her smile let me know she understood how I was feeling. I was lucky to have so much love and support around me. I want you guys to pause the video and answer the following question. Do you think you could be away from your family during the holidays? After you've answered this question, you can continue with the following reading. The following day was one of those unfun times when it was miserably cold and there was nothing to do but sit around waiting for our bodies to get used to the higher elevation. I kept my eye on the mountain, and I felt like it was challenging me to climb higher than I'd ever been. A storm cloud slowly formed around its peak, and I thought, oh man, this can't be good. An hour later, the sky turned dark as killer winds swept down the face of Aconcagua and rolled towards us, stirring up a whirlwind of gray dust so thick it obscured the mountain. A gust picked up a neighboring tent and tossed it. It looked like a big red paper bag bouncing along the sidewalk. Where were the occupants? I remembered Mom's words. El viento blanco has blown climbers to their deaths. Would the wind coming in with this storm send me bouncing off the mountain like a paper bag? Dad and Karen were having tea with some new friends at a nearby tent. It seemed safer to dive into our own tent than walk a few yards and find them. I zipped the door shut and sat in the middle of the tent, my knees drawn to my chest. The wind howled and bombarded the sides. I just hoped it was heavy enough to keep the wind from blowing the tent away. Finally, the flap opened and Dad and Karen scrambled inside. That's nasty, Dad said. You okay, buddy? I nodded. He gave a reassuring smile. The weight of the three of us will hold the tent down. Soon we were in the middle of a blizzard so loud it seemed like a helicopter was permanently landing next to us. I crawled into my sleeping bag and pulled the hood over my head. The wind howled all night long, piling snow on our tent, until the side caved in against my back. Dad went out to shake the snow loose, and I held my breath until he was back inside safely. The condensation of our breath formed tiny icicles that dropped from the ceiling in frozen rain. Even I, who could sleep anywhere, had a rough time trying to get some sleep. I guess we'd all dropped off because we woke up to a beautiful winter wonderland day. There were 2 feet of fresh snow on the ground and drifts of 4 feet or more. We need to make a break for it and get to Camp Berlin before the weather ambushes us again, Dad said. He called to Pablo and Allie in the next tent, and they crawled out, wide-eyed, and it was just too tempting. I bent over and formed a snowball. Oh, no, you don't, Pablo said. He quickly did the same and fired the first shot. He missed me, but snow splattered across Karen's jacket. Jordan, reinforcements, he shouted. Soon we were in the middle of a full-on snowball fight. Missiles flew in every direction. At one point, I leaned over to gather ammunition, and a big, wet snowball hit me right in the butt. Splat! I did a major faceplant. At 18,200 feet, we only had enough energy for a short battle, making and throwing snowballs, dodging, falling, laughing. All of that left us out of breath. But it was a blast. We put on quite a show for climbers from Britain, Poland, and Italy who had all crawled out of their tents at the noise. They gave us a round of applause, but didn't offer to help break the trail or lead the way through the snow to the next camp, Camp Berlin. Needless to say, the trail was covered with snow. Okay, team, are we ready to move on to Berlin? Dad asked. Weather on Aconcagua was unpredictable, but we knew there was a series of storms coming with short climbing windows in between. It was important that we get going so we when we could.